Cool. So the Sondagskloof white, almost the wine that sort of inspired the rest of the range in some ways, in terms of the visual aspect of it. I mean, Sondagskloof is a relatively new WO. It's a little ward, sort of behind Stanford, essentially.
Yeah.
How did you arrive to get fruit from there? Did you not have access to enough Sauvignon in Elam?
No, I did have enough access. So just for you, in terms of getting your heads around where exactly Sondagskloof is, it is if you through Hermanus, through Stanford, and then you can there's a road called the Flavour road towards Elam, and then in the middle of that's where you'll find Sondagskloof. And there's only two farms in this ward. It's the Hermanus Pietersfontein and Brunier. So those are the only two farms in that ward. And in 2017, Brett Sanders, the viticulturist of Brunier, contacted me, and he said, "Listen, I hear you're into Sauvignon. Are you interested in more Sauvignon?" And I said, my immediate reaction was no, I have enough Sauvignon. But then I was very interested in just going to the farm and check it out anyway. So went up to the farm, and they've got very interesting farming practices. They're actually biodynamic, or they were at that point trying to convert. I'm not sure what the status is now, but it's quite a tricky area because it's quite a it's a cool climate area, and there is also disease pressure. JP, you're just around the corner, so you would know. Just being coastal, it's not the easiest areas to go biodynamically, but 2018 was a great year to buy from that farm. It was a good year. There was very low disease pressure, and
it was a shit year everywhere else as well.
So I was very lucky I said to Brett, okay, I'll take some Sauvignon, but in my mind, I was like, what am I actually going to do with more Sauvignon? I already have 2 Sauvignon styles in my range. And I thought, well, I have to make it very differently for it to at all be relevant. And so, it was probably in the time where skin contact became quite more popular. People were experimenting with it a lot more. But that said, from drier conditions and different varietals. So I decided, okay, well, I've got nothing to lose because people are not aware of this wine yet. So let me experiment with skin contact. And so I took 50% of the grapes, and I crushed into a whole bunch open top fermenter, and then I fermented that exactly like I make my Shiraz. So I fermented it really warm, natural ferment. So with natural ferments, I find that your temperatures don't rise, depend on your vessel probably, but around 27 degrees, that's the max that you'd reach. And I would punch down daily, once or twice a day, and then I left it on the skins after ferment until my caps sank, and then I pressed it in a basket press. So worked pretty oxidatively, thinking that, geez, I'm going to be the next orange wine. And I failed dismally at making orange wines. But I was playing it safe because 50% of the grapes I whole bunch pressed and made it fermented in barrel. So the 2 fractions I kept separate for a very, very long time. In fact, I kept the skin ferment part, which then went to 100% new oak, by the way, as I explained with the SEM. I kept that for 16 months in oak, and then eventually bottled the wine, blended it together and bottled it, and was very, very unsure of this wine. I really wasn't, thinking that this is, the next best thing. And then I showed it to Tim Atkin, and he showed some interest in the wine without, I didn't know what the score was. Somebody actually said to me, so I tasted with him, and then he tasted it again. He asked for the wine again. And then somebody asked me, so how did it go? I said, no, it went fine. He tasted the Sondagskloof twice. He said, oh, no, that's a good sign. I'm like, oh, really? He said, yes. When Tim Atkin tasted wine twice, that's a good sign. Anyway, so Tim Ashford actually rated the wine well, and that's also the year when it won the Sauvignon Platters, whatever. I was so surprised about that. And then finally, you know, when everybody else believed in the wine, I started believing in the wine.
Well, I think it's interesting that it won Best Sauvignon Blanc, because it didn't win Best Skin Contact wine. It won Best Sauvignon Blanc. And it's, you know, I think that's we're having a skin contact workshop in about 6 weeks' time, so jump on that. We'll obviously discuss that a lot more there. But it's a legitimate technique to increase the quality of the wine and not necessarily, you know, get away from the Sauvignon Blancness of the wine.
Yeah, making an alternative wine.
Yeah.
You can actually stay within your classic kind of almost commercial style,
yes,
but add complexity with skins.
And richness and texture,
yes,
and accentuate different parts of the grape rather than...
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot to learn about this. You know, you've also experimented a lot with skins as well. And for me, it's very interesting because, as I mentioned before, the ferment is no indication of what's going to end up in the bottle at all. It always surprises me. And especially with these two whites, you know, like, you know, if you just look at their color, you know, they're not indicating skins at all. So, yeah, I think I've got a lot to learn with this, just to understand the intrinsics and what's actually happening behind, and why am I smelling what I'm smelling with the skins. But it's working.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's to the point where I don't think you actually need to have put skin fermented on the label of the Semillon, for example.
Yes.
Like you don't have skin fermented on the label of the Sondagskloof.
The Sondagskloof,
obviously it's only 50%, but it's not an overtly skinsy, aggressive sort of
no, but
esoteric orange wine.
Yeah,
it's just a good glass of Semillon.
Exactly, but you know, it didn't taste like this.
No, I understand.
During the year, it didn't taste like it. I'm like designing labels and thinking, shit, I've got to have to tell the people, like, they must understand this is skin ferment and they must understand it's grindrijf.
Yeah.
But now going back to it, it's like exactly like you said.
You don't need to make any excuses for the wine.
Yeah, it was not at all important to highlight that.
I love that this wine, the Sondagskloof, has this sort of that black currant leaf character coming through with the passion fruit and the sort of the winter melon, that sort of cantaloupe thing, and the bit of sweetness from the oak as well, that softness from the oak. It's a really lovely constructed wine. But as you say, like the grape does the heavy lifting here. It's not like you're putting a lot of Trizanne in there. You're sort of doing...
Yeah, and that, I think, is how good wine should be made. It's like it should be led by the grapes rather than us trying to force it into something. I mean, of all my wines, there is a lot of fancy winemaking footwork here, whereas with most of the other wines, it's much more led by the grape. And so subsequently, I've changed vineyards. So 2018 was the only year that I got the grapes from Brunier. All the other vintages were from Hermanus Pietersfontein, so from next door, because I couldn't get healthy grapes again. Let me rephrase, not healthy grapes. There wasn't enough grapes at Brunier for them to sell to outsiders. So I was a little bit, obviously, wary of going to another vineyard, and especially having had the following of 2018. But quickly realized that area is giving me that the Sondagskloof is crucial to what we're smelling in this wine.
What is it about Sondagskloof? Is it the soil, or?
It's interesting. Like, I've looked at all the parameters, and you know, they're not that vastly different. The clones, the soil structure, obviously, you know, proximity to ocean or whatever. Like, there's differences, but it's not like we're talking Elim versus Swartland here. There's just, for some reason, that little valley. This is what we get, because it's the same clone that I use it's a 316, the same that I use in my Elim Sauvignon Blanc.
It's just got such fruit weight on the palate, which I don't find in, Elim Sauvignons are structurally very aggressive, you know, very acidic and quite intense in that. But this one has a lovely fruit weight in that mid palate, which you don't often see.
Well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to experiment next year with skin contact on your Elim Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay, right.
And check
and you'll see which...
because I've now finally, with the Elim Semillon, I got something completely different. So something is telling me that perhaps it is the skin ferment. So we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll watch this space.
Very exciting.
Trizanne, the wine is obviously Sondagskloof white.
Yes.
So the Sauvignon Blanc part of it is
That's-
what you're putting front and centre.
No, that was just David's.
I'm just telling you what it's made from, essentially.
Yeah.
The official name of the wine is Sondagskloof White.
Yeah. But I called it very, there was a reason to call it white. Not to blend ever, but for people not to have preconceived ideas of this wine. Because if I called it Sauvignon Blanc, then half the people won't taste the wine. You know, your Chenin Blanc drinkers are not going to even waste their time with it. And also, if I called it Sauvignon, the Sauvignon Blanc drinkers might have preconceived ideas of what you expect of this wine. You know, so I wanted people to have no preconceived ideas when they taste this wine and then make up their own minds.
Essentially, it's the same sort of thought process that Winemaker has with their Reserve White, which is always 100% Sauvignon Blanc, but it's never called Sauvignon Blanc, it's just their Reserve White. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously once it won that Sauvignon Blanc of the Year award, I think most people now know it's Sauvignon Blanc without actually sort of gives the game away a little bit.